Absolutely. Let's get into our first team, the Houston Texans. Last season, Houston won the division at a 10-7 record, commendable. Obviously, room to grow, and they were led by a guy that you talked about in our last episode. Comparing him to Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud. So obviously, another year for Stroud in Houston. What do you feel like he can work on and grow into as in his journey as a great NFL quarterback?
I think mitigating pressure is going to be the biggest thing for him because he was pressured a lot more often last season than his rookie year. And people think he took a step back, which, sure, fine. His offensive line was one of the worst in the NFL. I think the only one pressure rate allowed wise, the only one worse than that was the Seahawks, and they were abysmal at almost every position across that line. So he had to deal with a lot of pressure that he wasn't used to because his first year he had pretty decent protection, like middle of the road level. And I think that a lot of the shortcomings he had kind of fell with Bobby Slowick, the former offensive coordinator, former PFF analyst. So it kind of hurt me to see a PFF guy get canned after 2 years, but rightfully so. Great offensive line, but he could not adapt at all throughout the season. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think what's going to help CJ Stroud is he is going to be able to make protection adjustments, hot route when he needs to, and if he doesn't like a play at all, he can change the play at the line of scrimmage entirely from pass to run to pass, play action, RPO screen, whatever he wants to do. He's going to have full reign to do what he wants, and that's really what you see a lot of these top QBs are able to do. I know I ragged on him a little bit, but Jalen Hurts is actually one of the best at being able to adjust out of a unfavorable pass look or run look and switch into something favorable opposite, run pass. I saw a great video. They were in a tray trip formation where the tight end was isolated on the line and they had three receivers to the other side, and it was gonna be a pass play, it looked like, or something. And defense was in a man lock look, and they had a linebacker and a safety walked up on the line of scrimmage against the whole right side of their offensive line. So Hurts checked it into a run, and Saquon broke out for a 40-yard run in the playoff game against the Rams. He has great ability to do that, and now we're going to get to see CJ Stroud, who's one of the sharpest processors in this league, get to do that. This offense is going to go to another level with the changes on the offense. And with the changes, last year, like I alluded to with the Bobby Slowick point, they were too late to make changes, and especially within the run game. So early on in the season, they ran a lot more zone styles, like inside zone, wide zone, split zone, outside zone, whatever. There's a lot of different variations of zone. They ran a shit ton of those, and they didn't run many gap or man schemes. So before week 13, from weeks 1 to 12, the Texans were 28th in EPA per rush, or 5th worst in the NFL. After they made that change from week 13 to week 18, and they started running more power counter duo blast type runs, they jumped from 28th to 11th in that category. And I think that's going to be a huge proponent. Nick Caley is coming from the Rams, who they run more duo and blast than anybody else in the league. So he's coming from that McVay tree, and they're going to run even more of that now than they even did in the back half or the back third or back quarter of last year. I think that running game and having a more sound running game cater to who you have in the backfield and who you have up front is going to give CJ Stroud better situations, because the Texans were one of the worst teams on first and second down success rate, and they were middle of the road on third down, but that was because they were in third and long more than anyone else in the league. So you'll expect that third down number to go up back into the top 10 territory now that this run game, at least in theory, should be a lot better. And I know Joe Mixon has his injury and his timetable is unknown. He could be back week 2 or he could be done for the year. It's been very murky on that. Nick Chubb, who's kind of it's so sad because he was so friggin' dominant in his prime, but now he's kind of back burner on that. He's going to be the main bell cow. Woody Marks is going to fill in here and there. Dameon Pierce obviously is going to thrive in this type of system. He's not a zone runner. He's very much a gap runner. And when he had his awesome rookie season, that's what they ran a lot of. So Dameon Pierce might even get some burn. I mean, he's still young. I think he's still like 25 years old, maybe 26. But, they have a good running back room. They retooled the offensive line. It's not good still, but the offensive line looks a little better. But overall, just CJ Stroud having more control, improvements in the run game, and absolutely loading up on this receiver room this offense is going to be better regardless of how this O-line does, I think.
Yeah, and so, we've talked about a lot rookie quarterbacks, sophomore quarterbacks, but third-year quarterbacks, in general. Obviously, everyone's got, different goals depending on where their team is at, where, the type of player that they are. But for you, especially that you're talking about, he's got a good team, a good offense around him now. Like, how much more control do you feel like CJ Stroud should be exerting in this game plan?
I think he should, obviously, not making the game plans himself.
Yeah, not
but
drawing
I think,
up plays.
Yeah, but I think doing what Brady and Belichick did, right? Where Brady, at the beginning of every week would sit down with Bill and be like, hey, I like this concept a lot against this look. Or, hey, this team is really good at shutting this down and we run it a lot. Let's use it as a wrinkle this week. So this way we're not running it as much. So when it does come up, it's kind of unexpected and takes them by surprise, right? I think CJ and Nick Caley having that connection is going to be paramount. And I think Nick Caley wants to trust him to do that because they trusted Matt Stafford to do that. And he's done a really good job of that his entire career of making those slight adjustments week by week. And I think it says a lot that a first-year offensive coordinator is giving CJ Stroud the tools to say, hey, if you don't like something, it's all you, dude. You figure it out. And I don't think that would happen without CJ being involved in the game plan and having some control over it.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the defensive unit. A lot of improvements. Where do you feel like the Texans defense will rank among, just the league in general in 2025?
If I could put money on it, I would say top 5. And if the odds were long enough, I would put them as the best defense in the NFL. D'Amico Ryans has completely transformed this defense. There's a lot of really good young talent and savvy veterans on this team. I think this might be one of the best defenses we preview all year. You have Derek Stingley Jr. and Will Anderson Jr., who are two freaks at their position. Will Anderson was a man as a rookie, and Derek Stingley, since recovering from his injuries early in his career, has blossomed into a top 3 corner in the NFL. Both of them are awesome. Will Anderson is probably going to be a top 5 edge by the time the season's over, and that's a tough group to break into. So that's really good. And then you have some veteran studs. You have Danielle Hunter, who has been awesome his entire career, minus 1 or 2 years he had injuries. And then CJ Gardner-Johnson, I know he's got, some injury things here and there, but he looks like he's pretty cleared up. Those are 2 veterans. CJ's won a Super Bowl before, so he brings in that Super Bowl presence into this locker room. Danielle Hunter has been around for years and has always been dominant, so you have that going along with that. And then there's lots of young talent. Jalen Petrie, safety, nickel hybrid, has just gotten better and better every single year and is pushing to be one of the best safeties in the NFL. Kamari Lassiter had a lot of picks last year, which was really nice to see as a rookie. I was not as high in him as other people coming out of Georgia, but he proved that he can play in this league. And it's not that I didn't doubt his ability. I doubted his ability to start right away, and he proved me wrong there, so he did really well. Similar guy, Kalen Bullock, as a free safety, has played pretty relatively well last year in a starting role. And Henry Tuoto, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. I could be wrong. But just a gritty, solid linebacker who just kind of rounds out this defense of young guys who are good and keeping this defense able to just rush 4 and drop 7 and have fun with it because they don't blitz a lot because they don't have to. I mean, they have a sick defensive line top to bottom, and that starts with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter on the edges, which is great. But as far as their ranks and how they played in 2024, and pretty much it's the same whole unit coming back, so they should improve. They were 6th in EPA per play allowed, 7th in EPA per dropback allowed, and 6th in EPA per rush allowed. And then success rate, they were 4th in total success rate, 2nd in dropback success rate, and 14th in rush success rate. This is just top to bottom, one of the best defenses in the league, and probably will, I would bet money, finishes top 5 this year.
Absolutely. And let's get into your dark horse here. It's a wide receiver. It's going to be a guy that CJ Stroud is going to be finding a lot downfield this year, and that's Christian Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a lot of these dark horses that we've talked about on the show are guys that have had fantastic, years leading up to 2024, but may have missed, 2024 or a portion of it due to injury or other issues. And so Christian Kirk obviously had a broken collarbone for half the season last year, but I mean he's had some highly efficient seasons in the years leading up to that. So, what do you feel like we're going to get out of him in terms of a Texans option here?
Yeah, he fills an immediate need left by Tank Dell, who I love Tank Dell. He's one of my favorite players in the league, but 2 gruesome injuries in a row. He's obviously going to miss all of 2025. Unsure of his status for 2026. So I think getting a veteran receiver like Christian Kirk, who has played out wide in the slot, pretty much exclusively a slot receiver now at this point, but could play outside if you needed, was a really good get for this team. As you said, was hurt half of last year, but 2023 was his most efficient season. Almost 14 yards a catch, over 2 yards per route run, basically 4.5 yards after catch per reception, a 10.7 ADOT average depth of target, which is pretty good. 34 first downs and 104.5 passer rating when targeted. Like, all good numbers. Those are solid. That's what you want from someone like Christian Kirk. And with that was when he was in Jacksonville, where he was the number 1 target besides Evan Ingram when he had his breakout year, right? So this was Christian Kirk at his peak. This was when he was the guy being targeted in this offense. He had some guys that he was working with on this offense. I believe Zay Jones was in that group, and Zay Jones had a really good year. And that might be something we touch on a little bit later as we cover another team. But he's going to be surrounded by really good talent. You have Nico Collins, who, in my opinion, is a top 5 receiver and is the closest thing we have in the NFL right now to Julio Jones from a size, athleticism, and just ball skills type player. He's the closest we're going to get to Julio Jones. And I don't know if there's anyone else in the league like him from that skill set. And then you have basically the diet version of him that they just drafted in Jaden Higgins, who is just a freak. And then they get his teammate, Jalen Noel from Iowa State. This is a really good receiving core just with those 4. And they traded away Mechie because they didn't need Mechie. And obviously Tank Dell's hurt. So when Tank Dell is healthy, if he somehow gets healthy at the end of this year, you're looking at a 5-deep receiver room that could all be starters on any other team in the league. Just nuts. So with how deep it is, he shouldn't be the leading target. He shouldn't be getting the most attention. So he's going to get opportunities to make good on those targets. And talking about replacing Tank Dell within this offense, we're going to go through the past 2 years when he's gotten hurt. And after he gets hurt is a smaller sample size. So there's some gray area, but that's why we look at EPA, because it gives you just raw efficiency, right? So before Tank Dell got hurt in 2023, this offense was 7th in EPA per dropback. After he got hurt, they dropped to 26th, or the 7th worst. Okay? So, 1 year, small sample size, whatever. Let's look at last year, because this is when the passing offense was not as good year-round. Okay? So, before he got hurt in 2024, in that Chiefs game when his leg literally got obliterated, they were 20th in EPA per dropback. So, they dropped off pretty significantly from the year before, but still okay. That's not terrible, but it's not good either. After that injury, they dropped to 30th, or the 3rd worst afterwards, which someone dropping 20th or 30th, you might be like, it's only 10 spots. It's not as bad as the year before. When you look at the raw EPA metrics, they dropped 0.22 points of EPA per play. That's the same equivalent. The Ravens were the number 1 offense this year. If the Ravens dropped 0.22 points, they would go from 1st to 15th. They would drop 14 slots and would be middling back of the road in the league. That is from a EPA point-wise perspective, that is a massive drop-off, and it can't be overstated enough what Tank Dell means to this offense. So slotting in a veteran like Christian Kirk with a very similar skill set, and he's a bit more durable besides that broken collarbone, I think this offense isn't going to miss a beat with Kirk in there. And he might be able to do some things that Tank Dell may not be able to do in terms of understanding zones coverage better, being able to pace his routes a little bit better and know when he's getting open in the scheme, and just be a solid possession guy. Because, like, he doesn't have the burst anymore. Like, that's where Tank Dell thrives. His burst is unbelievable, but he's still got that, like, he's just reliable. And you need a guy like that in an offense like this, especially that's going to run a lot of condensed formations, a lot of play action where CJ Stroud is turning his back. So you need guys to understand where they need to fit in the route package to get open at the right time. So when CJ Stroud gets his head around, it's okay, he's there. Get rid of it.
Absolutely. And so this Texans team, I mean, since the 2010s, I mean, they've been in and out of the playoffs. They've had some good seasons. They've had their ups and downs. If they make the playoffs this year, it would be their third consecutive playoff appearance.
Mm-hmm.
What do they need to finally put it all together and become a serious contender in the AFC?
I think this offensive line needs to play as a unit. And I think that's the one glaring like issue with this roster is this offensive line. Like, yeah, you could point to Nick Chubb and Dameon Pierce's history over the past couple of years. You know, you could look at the run game, but a lot of that starts with the offensive line. And if they can't all work together and play at a high level, I'm not sure what else this team is going to be able to do to get the most out of CJ Stroud and out of this very deep receiving room. Like, if we go through this offensive line, Ariante Ursary, rookie, second-round pick, but looks pretty solid, like early shades of Donald Penn in his pedigree. At least that's what I saw when I was scouting him. Donald Penn was, at one point, one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. So they got him in the second round, really good value. Laken Tomlinson, he was on that Seattle line last year. That was abysmal, but he was probably the best out of the interior three. That gave them a lot of issues, but that's not saying much. He was fine and should be fine here. We'll see. Jake Andrews from New England claimed off waivers. A backup guy, should not be starting, but he slated as a starter with Juice Scruggs and Jarrett Patterson backing him up. We'll see if one of them might be able to take that spot from him, but we'll see. Ed Ingram from Minnesota, they got in a trade. I have no idea why they made this trade. Ed Ingram was the weakest spot on that offensive line last year. And has been his entire career. I mean, we didn't talk about it in the Vikings episode, but their draft history is horrible, especially 2022, and he was part of that really bad 2022 class. And then Titus Howard. I personally, like, Blake Fisher has struggled, and I didn't think he was NFL ready when he got drafted and he got forced to play a lot. But I think best case scenario is moving one of Titus Howard or Blake Fisher into that right guard spot and let the other play right tackle and just see what happens, because Ed Ingram is just bad. Now, granted, a little bit of a different run scheme. Not that much different because KOC does come from that Rams coaching tree, but he does run a little bit more zone. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how Ed Ingram does in a much heavier gap scheme, but I don't know if that's really going to help him, especially when it comes to pass pro, because he's one of the worst pass protecting guards in the league. And that's why you trade from you trade someone for pass protection. You'll trade them for run blocking, especially a team that's going to be as pass heavy as these guys are.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at their schedule, I've kind of asked you this for, a couple of other teams, but what is the point in their schedule? So they have, let's go in their first 5 games of the season. They have a bye week 6. They start off at the Rams, then they host the Bucks. Then they head to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars, host the Titans, and then head to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. And then they have a bye week 6. Mm-hmm. Coming out of that bye, or actually going into that bye, what's a solid record for Houston?
I think 3-2 is fine because you're playing Ravens on the road. That's going to be a really tough, scrappy game, and you got embarrassed by them last season on Christmas. So I don't know if that's going to be a win. It might be a closer game than last year. At least it should be on paper. But I don't think they get that win just because it's in Baltimore and it's right before the bye week. I think they have to win one against the Rams or the Bucks. If I had to put money on it, I would say they would beat the Bucks, especially because, like we said earlier today and on last episode, this Bucks defense is young and scrappy, and I think this offense is just going to be more tailor-suited to take on a defense like that than the Rams, who were just absolutely dominant at the end of last year, which we'll talk about in the NFC West episode. Then they play the Jags and Titans. Those should both be easy divisional wins. The Jags might give them a couple of issues if that offense clicks, but I don't think defense is going to keep up with the Texans at all. So, and then they go into that bye week and they come out against the Seahawks, 49ers, Broncos, Jags, and Titans for the next 5 games. Like, again, that could be another 3-2 stretch. This team could be 6-4 or 7-3 heading into the final 7-game stretch, which I think is manageable. They play some tough teams in that run, but it's definitely manageable. They could finish 10-7 again, 11-6, maybe even 12-5.